My family fought to save their farm under this flag. Who was working that farm? My family was. Who was working the farm? They were poor. Do you know how much a slave cost back then?
How bad was slavery, Daisy? How bad?
It couldn't be any worse there. I just keep trying to tell you. Can anything be any worse when a white man was having children by the Negro slave women and then putting them up for sale on the block? Putting my father, they wanted to sell my father for a breeder for $12,000 when he was 12 years old. And old Golden, John Golden, was the rich planter. He wouldn't sell him for that. This lady that was in this room this morning is from New Orleans, one of the women. Just this past 2 weeks, she found this picture of my father down in New Orleans, and she's bringing it to me now. I'm going to have a copy of my father.
Great. What regiment did he fight in, Daisy?
1st New Jersey Cavalry. When he ran away, my father was on the plantation working for his master, and he with 27 other boys ran away, swam across the Rappahannock River, and joined the 1st New Jersey Cavalry in 6th from the war.
Was he a good fighter, your father? Did he fight hard for the Union?
Oh, yes, dear. He was a brave boy. Naturally, he had nothing else to do. He was a brave boy. He had to be brave to come up here in this country and make a living and get ahead and get on his feet and raise us family.
There's actually a knowable answer to that question. By 1860, at the time of the Civil War, enslaved people's value was somewhere between $200 on the low end all the way up to $2,000. So we're talking about, in today's dollars, maybe somewhere between $2,400 and, like $50,000. There are even some estimates that say that some enslaved people were valued at somewhere around $180,000 in today's dollars. So you can think of it basically like owning a car. And about 1.6% of Southern families owned more than 200 slaves, like having like a whole car dealership. But about 20 to 25% of Southerners at the time of the Civil War owned at least one enslaved person. It's like basically living in a society where wealthy people all have cars. Well, what do all the people who don't have cars want? A car. And even if a family worked on a small farm and didn't have enslaved people, what do you think their goal was? Their goal was to earn enough money to be able to buy people, to buy humans to do the work. It's not like families didn't aspire to have enslaved people. Why do you think that Southern whites were willing to go to war, to literally go to war against the United States for slavery? Because remember, every single state that seceded, all 11 of them said explicitly, we're doing this to preserve slavery. Well, why would somebody who's on a small farm want to fight to preserve slavery? Because their aspiration was to become a major planter, which means a major slave owner. That's what they all wanted to do. That's what they all aspired to do. And they also wanted to defend the system whereby they couldn't be enslaved. Only Africans could, only black people. And so that system of hierarchy that allowed any white person, no matter how rich or poor, to be superior to any black person, and for that black person to be captured and treated as property, and their children and their children's children owned by a white person. This is a system that benefited every single white person in the South. And by the way, every white person in the North too. Because even if you weren't a slave owner, you benefited from the economy that cotton production, that rice production, that all of these industries generated. You could benefit by being an insurance owner. Slaves were insured like cars. Enslaved people also produced goods that were sold. So if you were somebody who was in the shipping business or, the cotton milling business, all of them benefited from slavery. So whether you were a small farmer or a big farmer, the slavery system benefited you. And you were willing to go to war to preserve it and to preserve white supremacy because that was the whole basis of your society. And by the way, a lot of people in the South went to war simply because they were told to and because the rich people around them made sure that the poor kids were doing the fighting, right? And so it doesn't matter whether your family was rich, poor, had one slave or 10 or none. It doesn't matter. Everyone in the South benefited from that economy and that system, and they went to war to preserve it and to preserve white supremacy forever. So that's the answer to your question. You also told on yourself just by saying that at all, because why are you curious about how much they cost? You miss that system, right? You think things were better then? One last note, that flag is not even the flag that your forefathers fought under for their farm. That was not the flag of the Confederacy. That's a flag that they created afterwards. It's literally just a symbol of racism and white supremacy. And you're flying it because MAGA.
Well, it has come to my aware that white Americans don't want to see black Americans going miles away and achieving their own things on their own without them. And in that case, they are requesting black Americans not to leave them, not to give up on them. First of all, white people have realized that they have made severe mistakes, not one mistakes, not two mistakes, or even more than you think, all right? And on that case, they are now realizing that they need black Americans, and they don't want to be living the life with the blame of somebody gave up on you because of your behavior, what you are doing, misbehaving and everything. They are asking black people not to give up on them. Their behaviors, maybe being racist, always being against the black people's idea, not giving them a space to express themselves and talk about shit that's happening in America. Like everything's all about white people, right? So they are asking for black people not to give up on them. And I have clips here. Okay then, I will come back with more commentary and talk more about the video.
Not gonna lie to you, it's hard to be surprised by how absurdly evil the U.S. operates if you have like a real functioning knowledge of chattel slavery. And this is not a dig, like people are actively barred from better education and the totality of the horrors of chattel slavery because it allows them to like obfuscate how uniquely evil it was. This is one of the reasons why white separatists and Christian nationalists and conservatives love to bring up like, oh, there was already a slave trade, Africans were selling Africans, Arabs were selling Africans. Like, yes, there's an Arabic slave trade, there was an African slave trade, but they were not the same as the US's. They know that, which is why they're nostalgic for the time. A lot of people don't realize one of the reasons why race relations in the US isn't muddied the way that it is in Europe or in other colonies that they had is because we had no pathway to personhood. That was a unique quality of American slavery. Every other place had a path to citizenship or personhood. You can buy your way into freedom. You could breed your way into freedom. That's how we get like the mulatto. This was big in Spanish and Portuguese colonies. If you bred out enough African, you would be freed. If you married out, like in Brazil or in Portuguese colonies, you would be freed. No such thing existed here. It was the one drop rule. That matters. It's one of the reasons why historically, I don't see why we use like BIPOC language because it's not about everybody else. And this isn't like in a good way, but it's the reality. Like the US is very much still reconciling with a black-white racial conflict. The rest of y'all are collateral. That sounds mean, but it's the truth. And history shows us that because even amongst its other enslaving white counterparts, the US was still amongst their contemporaries regarded as a uniquely evil form of enslaver. Very stringent race relations. And all of it is contemporary. We are living in derivatives and replications of the plantation every day. And I'm thinking about it a lot because seeing these people be like extrajudiciously deported, whether or not they're citizens, whether or not they're here illegally, borders aren't real. I don't care about them. But you get what I mean. This like no tolerance policy of the other is like really fascinating if you know like how much work it took to maintain the power of whiteness. The fact that post-enslavement, after the Reconstruction period, they had to restructure what whiteness was because of their numbers. And it's the racial anxieties accompanied by white folks' fear of black retaliation that led to them subsuming other groups that were not considered white into their own as a self-preservation tactic. This is where we see them giving the Irish and the Italians and the Jewish people a chance to like audition into whiteness, to bulk their numbers. And this is something they've been thinking about for a long time. It's why the Great Replacement theory is literally the bedrock of conservatism. This is just a contemporary version of white enslavers being absurdly cruel and then writing in their diaries about how they fear about being killed by their like slaves at night. This is just that with Google. But one of the other reasons why they make sure that people don't know the full scope of chattel slavery in the American context is to see like where it was failed otherwise when people would try to replicate it elsewhere. After the Civil War, tens of thousands of white enslavers took their plantations, uprooted them, and placed them in Brazil because, not so fun fact, I guess, Brazil was the last in the West to abolish slavery. They didn't get rid of it until 1888. They were also the colony with the most enslaved Africans total. This is why the largest black population outside of the continent of Africa is Brazil. When these white enslavers got there, again, fleeing having to get rid of their plantations, they wrote endlessly about how homesick they were, not just because of things like the climate and the fact that they weren't allowed to fully replicate the same plantations. Like, for instance, a lot of them wanted to grow cotton. You can't do that in a subtropical climate like Brazil. But explicitly, their biggest gripe with Brazil was with its race relations because they had a freed black black population, because Brazil, a Portuguese colony, was one where you could breed out blackness, you could buy out of enslavement. There was a path to citizenship. They were considered people there, and that was something white enslavers physically couldn't conceive of. It's quite literally what led to tens of thousands of them coming back to the States. A few successfully settled there. That's why you get the town of Americana in Brazil. That's how you get this like ethnic group considered the Confederados, which are the descendants of these previously enslavers who then started to mix with the local, Brazilian population over time. And one of the reasons why the Confederados and Americana settlement is at the top of my mind is that when these tens of thousands of homesick, like middle class, they weren't like the most wealthy, but semi-wealthy white enslavers were done with their like Brazilian project, they petitioned the U.S. to help subsidize their travel back because they spent all their money trying to replicate their plantations in Brazil. And the U.S. did! Like, the U.S. literally helped pay to repatriate these enslavers back to the States, specifically back to the South. And it's this knowledge that blows my mind all the time, where it's like, my tax dollars, your tax dollars are being used to send people wherever the fuck this administration wants them to go. And this is the same country that was like paying out reparations to white enslavers for loss of product and income. The same country that, when after a civil war had tens of thousands of defectors leave to maintain slavery, they helped pay to bring back. That's this country's legacy. That's why I always say the U.S. is profoundly unique in its evil. Our race relations are very clear. This is not like a brown, black, like melting pot struggle. This is all about reminding black people our ultimate place, which is as being a proprietary force for white America. And everyone else is essentially just collateral. You have to get everyone else out because they are amongst us. But also, if there are less of the brown, less groups in between us, it'll be much easier to legislate and navigate a white-black racial caste system, which is why they are deeply nostalgic for the American past, because uniquely speaking, within the context of transatlantic slavery, we were the ones with the harshest, most violent race politic. And that's what they are seeking again. Race relations is the very reason why our left politics is considered the right in Europe. This country is soulless for a reason. And this isn't to say that Europe didn't have its problems. Again, they are the reason we had these colonies. They're a reason that many people speak Spanish, that a quarter of the world is francophone, why folks who should have never heard about a pope have Catholic names. But ultimately, this is just the pot of racial violence and terror boiling over finally post-Civil War, because it's not enough that they didn't like punish the South. They were like actively rewarding them, giving them positions of power and telling them to just replicate what they needed quietly. And that's what happened. And we're living in the after of that. And I think if more people had a better education about the totality of chattel slavery in the American context, they would be less occupied with like preserving the perceived soul of the country and more interested in, after this shit burns down, what can we build that's better? I've been begging y'all to get woke on transatlantic slavery for so long, and Reconstruction specifically for so long, for this purpose. Because the black folks who were allowed to have this education, like, we knew time was a ticking, and the time is now.
Can't excuse being so flippant with the reality that black people find themselves in today because of white people. Your forefathers, my forefathers. I also heard a lot of centering of yourself, centering your whiteness and your kind heart, and asking why black people can't see that. What I didn't see was any action, any ideas, any thoughts, and certainly any evidence of the fact that you've done anything in those 30 years to try to change the trajectory of being black in our country. You were asking black people to give you examples of where you can be an ally and a supporter. Why is that their problem? You need to be going out and finding those opportunities to use your spaces and your privilege to change the course of blackness in our country. I would love to hear from you what you say in a braai amongst white people like yourself, where it inevitably goes to black economic empowerment and how sad everybody is that their husbands were passed up for an opportunity. I want to hear what you say then, because that is an example of the type of place where you need to speak up. Not standing here creating content that centers you. If you are so open-minded and so ready to mend bridges and tell black people that they should stop being hurt by the history that got them to this point today, and that they should stop aiming any hurt at white people, then what are you doing to drive that? How are you advocating for equality? How are you speaking about equity? What institutions you're a part of, what organizations you support, how you show up in the world, and then we can have this conversation. But this is unsubstantiated and surface level, and incredibly unkind.
Well, welcome back to this space. Now, black people have endured a lot of things being Americans. Discriminations, being denied opportunities, being seen like they can't live in some neighborhood, right? Not being given equal treatment in America. Like a black person can't board a certain train for transport, a certain bus or something. A black person can't live in some fancy house. A black person can't own a beautiful car. A black person can't take the children into beautiful schools. There's some school that belong to the black people and that belong to the to the white Americans. So I feel like sometimes when a white person sits somewhere and think about this, all right? When they sit somewhere and they think about what they are doing as people, they feel like, okay, we somehow at some points now we are making some mistakes that are not okay, all right? We are making some mistakes that are not okay, and this thing won't really sit well with us, okay? It's going to haunt us. So rather than assuming that black people will be taking everything easy on us, sometimes or some days they will get tired of us and they won't take anything from us, and they will feel disappointed. They will get tired of our issues. So before that time comes, or because it already came and it passed, okay? Now, before it comes, let's find a way of convincing black people not to give up on us, because after all, we are just humans. Everybody messes up in life, right? Anybody can mess up in life, and they are sorry, they are asking for forgiveness, and they want maybe to be given another chance, right? So black people, it's up to them, because they know the space of being in their position. They know how it feels being there. They know on how it feels somebody ignoring you, disrespecting you, making you feel like you don't belong here. We can't have this or that, because you are black or something. All right, it's high time the world should learn to respect every individual in this world, because everybody matters. Everybody has a value in this world. That is it. Tell me in the comments. Do you feel like white people just realize that they can't live without black Americans, or it's another way of winning black people's heart? People, I love you. I'm out.